Hej och hjärtligt välkomna ska ni vara till Pressträff direkt med Investortaget. Denna upplaga av Pressträff direkt är ett samarbete mellan oss på Investortaget, Direkt Studios, Stockpicker och idag PMD Solutions. I den här sändningen kommer grundaren och vdn Myles Murray via länk från Cork i Irland presentera resultat, villkor och målsättning med den nyligen aviserade kapitalanskaffningen samt de senaste mycket positiva nyheterna. Som vanligt kommer bolaget att kunna besvara era frågor om ni tittar live och ställer frågorna live. Hinner ni inte få svar på era frågor eller ser det här i efterhand så hänvisar vi med varm hand till bolaget och dess hemsida. Presentationen kommer nu att fortsätta på engelska. Hello Myles, how are things on the Emerald Island?
Doing really well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
This should be very interesting, Myles. Please walk us through your presentation and how you will make every breath count.
Thank you so much. My screen should be shared there now. I'm the CEO and founder of PMD Solutions, a digital health company which is looking to transform patient outcomes by making every breath count. We are a digital company underpinned by our own proprietary medical devices, but wrapped in a service to help healthcare providers improve the outcomes of patients, but also improve the efficiency of operations and, of course, cost benefit of the services they provide. Now, one of the more proprietary technologies, the founding technology that we have created is a device called RespiraSense. Now, RespiraSense is a wearable device that goes onto the side of the chest and directly measures respiratory rate in a continuous way, with the uniqueness of being motion tolerant. In other words, if a patient is walking, talking, or eating, we can still continuously and accurately measure breathing without any false readings from those non-breathing artifacts. And this technology communicates wirelessly to healthcare systems, electronic healthcare records, or to local nearby devices. Recently, in our acquisition of a US company, we also acquired a fantastic platform called Cora. Cora is a web-based platform which takes in vital sign measurements like weight or blood pressure or temperature or respiratory rate and visualizes that information for healthcare providers to make timely interventions in the community or home care setting, particularly geared towards patients stepping down from hospital into the home care in a safe and efficient way, or chronic care patients like from heart failure or chronic lung disease, to see if there's any exacerbation or worsening of the condition so it can be treated in the community rather than leading to a hospitalization. We've just launched our Q2 numbers and what we have announced is an increase of 30% of our revenue compared to this time last year, our revenue coming in about 12.3 million SEK. We have the vast majority of that revenue being reoccurring revenue, so more than 70%, and a current gross margin of 77%, which typically travels anywhere between 75 to 80%, depending on the product mix for the revenue in that particular quarter. And when we look at the historical trend of our financial performance, we have been increasing our revenue consistently over the last few years. And our mission right now is actually to bring the company towards sufficient annual recurring revenue to be profitable from December 31st this year. As you can see from the graph last quarter, we were trending towards profitability and very close to it. But with the recent acquisition of the US business and the reorganization of that business, we incurred an additional transitory operational expenditure, which we don't expect to see a lot of going forward. So we do see a fantastic continuation of trend towards profitability going forward and a continued increase in our top line. PMD has a very rich history. We were founded in 2011, and not to give you the whole story, but we have a very rich history in clinical evidence, in developing health economic data for healthcare systems to evaluate our technology and improve their delivery of service. We have evidence from around the world. We have been received accolades and acknowledgements from health authorities like NICE in England and several accolades from notable providers like Frost & Sullivan, for example. But our more recent history has been the most exciting. So in January of this year, we decided to do a reverse takeover of Nasdaq listed Promore Pharma. We renamed it back to our own company name, PMD Solutions. And since then, we have been rapidly growing as a newly listed company since January of this year, and delivering again on our revenue targets and our trend towards profitability. So this is really why we exist. Changes in your breathing are the earliest indication of deterioration, whether it's heart rate or blood pressure. And the problem today is that healthcare providers don't have a reliable way of measuring patient breathing consistently. And this means that 80% of recorded respiratory rates are clinically significantly incorrect. And the challenge is that by breathing faster, you actually normalize everything else, because that's your body trying to fight the infection or fight the disease. But like anyone breathing faster for so long, you get tired. And when you drop your respiratory rate to rest, that's where the shock to the system occurs and deterioration and the drama comes around that. There was a study done to show that 31% of preventable escalations in care were the result of poor physiological monitoring. And we have determined through our own evidence that 41% of the time is contributed to poor and inaccurate respiratory rate monitoring. These are huge numbers. And by deploying our technology to address this clinical need, we can make huge impacts to patient outcomes and the efficiencies of healthcare systems. Now, our technology is patented. It's in its third generation. It's used at scale at the moment between Ireland and England. Its novelty is how it measures breathing. It directly measures breathing from the chest, using the chest and the belly, and removing any non-breathing movements that may disrupt the signal or cause inaccurate data. And this has been revolutionary because it's the first time continuous RR can be used for the clinical decision-making of getting the right care for the right patient at the right time. So really, it's the fundamental advantage of motion tolerance that gives the ability to continuously measure for triggering the right care. Now, this single device is our proprietary technology, but we have wrapped services around it in terms of delivery to both hospital and community and care pathways. But the good news for us is that although we now have access to multiple pathways, we still have the same customer, which is the hospital. So the hospital is our customer, and the vast majority of the patients that we serve today are acute respiratory, but a portion are non-respiratory as well. So although we have a very strong base in the acute selling of our device to hospitals for the monitoring of patients in a clinical ward within a hospital setting, we also now sell our services, which our technology is part of, to help the patient get discharged early from hospital, to get into the home environment safely. And if there's any attention that the patient needs, they get it early so that they can keep the patient at home, again, while remaining safe. So our market segments are direct sales to hospitals and a service delivery to patients being monitored in a home care setting, but the hospital remains the customer. So today, PMD is in growth stage in terms of Ireland, which is our biggest market today. It's in growth stage in UK, which most of our activity is now looking to come from, particularly to support the top line. And with the acquisition of the US company in April of this year, the US is also now in growth stage. We have entered the German market this year, and we've launched our first pilot and have a few more pilots to announce in the coming months. We're learning how to sell into the German market, but the German market will be a fast follower to the English market for next year. So as I discussed the UK market, Ireland were very strong, but in the UK market, there are 42 regions with potential revenue of anywhere between 16 to 20 million SEK annually. We're currently in the Midlands and Nottingham, but the growth in the company in the near term will come from the UK market. And similarly in the US, where we have about 1,200 active patients today, we have a very strong pipeline to increase the volume of those active patients, where the majority of patients we focus are cardiology based. We also service nephrology patients, but we can also next year introduced respiratory patients to that cohort as well. And the good news for the US company is that anywhere from 1,800 to 2,300 patients will allow the US operation break even. So today we focus on England, we focus on the US's growth markets, and we follow Germany as an early market pilot stage that will be a fast follower to the US market. Our business model is really simple. For acute hospitals, we sell sensors. So after an installation fee and an annual license app, the vast majority of revenue, repeatable recurring revenue, comes from the sale of our consumable sensor. And that offering reduces the average length of stay by 1.5 days for hospitals with a 300% ROI. And for our services business, where we onboard patients, we manage them from hospital to home, we supply them with all the equipment and the digital innovations they require. We keep in touch with them to make sure that they're reporting and using the technology, that they're comfortable in doing so. We have seen enormous reduction in readmission rates of over 80%. Our providers are breaking even within 3 months, and there is a fantastic engagement from both the patient and the provider in the use of this service. So to summarize and bring that all together, PMD is focused on the respiratory market for hospital sales, and it is focused on both the respiratory and cardiology market for the hospital at home sales, with a combined market opportunity of 116 billion. Now that is a serviceable market as opposed to a total attainable market. Our hospital sales market, we're only estimating 15 to 35% of all respiratory admissions would get our technology, and the market value is based on half the price point of the technology today. Where the hospital at home market is rapidly emerging. It's reimbursed within the US, so it's growing a lot faster there. But England has invested an awful lot of money in deploying virtual ward programs, and Ireland is a fast follower there, where 50% of all virtually monitored patients are either respiratory or cardiac based. So in terms of the company and the goals and the future of what we're looking to achieve, profitability is absolutely key. We want to achieve a sufficient annual recurring revenue target by December 31st of this year to ensure profitable operations from the start of 2025 onwards. We're expanding into new markets, which has been accelerated with the acquisition of the US business. We are estimating conservatively 30% growth year on year between 23 to 26. And our revenue target has been recently increased from 150 million SEK in ARR by the end of 2026 to 260 million SEK because of the US acquisition. And it is our estimation that the US business is equal or slightly bigger than the European opportunity during that timeframe. So to summarize, we are a very ambitious digital healthcare company with strong growth history and strong margins, with a clear view of reaching profitability this year and a proven ability to scale. Fantastic proprietary technologies that have been proven at scale in terms of their commercial viability, and a fantastically strong IP pipeline to remain ahead of the curve. And as a founder-led organization, we really are passionate about our value, our mission, and of course, protecting shareholder value. So thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to any questions at yourself.
Well, thank you, Myles. Quick and very thorough, I must say. We have a couple of questions here on the top chat, as well as a lot of pre-sent questions, but I will start with the live questions here. In the result, you have a charge or a post called "Other Liabilities and Account." So just to clarify, what would that be?
So because we acquired the US business, we have just accounted for anything that might have been there sometime into the future to reflect it into our accounts. Now we're going over further restructuring, so we don't expect to see that in next quarter, or at the very least in Q4 this year, but we have accurately reflected it as US operational stuff that we wanted to account for as the right way to do it, because we do account according to IFRS. So it is not something that we expect to see going forward, but it is something we did reflect as the full reorganization has not concluded yet.
So it's a prudent reservation of,
Correct.
let's say, a worst case scenario or something like that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. And I'm just kicking off with another question here. I mean, do you expect to get the same market share in the UK as you have in Ireland? And if so, would you dare to give us a time frame of that, a timeline?
Yeah, I mean, PMD is quite a lean organization, particularly with a focus on achieving profitability. So a lot of our near-term commercial progress is going to be more organic than accelerated through significant investment and additional OPEX, resulting in continued negative cash flow. So what I can say is that the UK potential in relation to the Irish potential is a reasonable near-term comparison. In terms of going forward from there, because PMD will continue to have a lean operation and maintain profitability as key, we would have more cash flow because of our gross margin to invest into scaling opportunities after 2025 and so on. So we would see that the UK market has a significant potential of north of 200 million, maybe 250 million SEK in a reasonable time horizon, where we would like to achieve equality to the Irish market initially, and then that will feed into further growth for the UK market. But keeping in mind, by the time we get to that point, Germany will start coming online, and the US may actually surpass Europe in its entirety at that point in time also. So we are seeking growth from multiple vectors. And fortunately for us, every market that we're currently working with is multiple the size of Ireland. So we do expect significant growth over the coming months and years.
Interesting, and that's a good segue to one of the questions I received ahead of this. I mean, obviously, the jump between Ireland and the UK, it's not too big, I would assume, both geographically and also culturally, which means that you will have a pretty good idea on how the healthcare, NHS, and what have you works. But if we look at Germany and the US, how much synergies would there be, or do you have to, let's say, reinvent the wheel?
Sure. What's fascinating is Germany is far closer to the US. So how we're selling in the US is very transferable to the German perspective, where Ireland and England, yes, you're absolutely right, the healthcare systems are quite similar and the patient pathways are quite similar, and how the hospitals are funded are very similar. So I think we know very well how to sell in England at this point in time, and we're building our contracts as a result of that, which are multi-stakeholder sales. There's a lot of individuals to bring together, a lot of committees to close contracts in the UK, which is notoriously known for that. But Germany would be a bit more focused on operational enhancements and have a bit more freedom with discrete spending for innovations to help them achieve those operational enhancements, like reduced length of stay, reducing hospital readmissions. The US is probably just a little bit easier again because it is predominantly Medicare driven. So access to reimbursement is a little bit more streamlined in the US than it would be in Germany. So we have the ability to scale faster in the US than we maybe would in Germany. So the scale in Germany would be similar to the scale in England, but the operational and business models would be very similar to the US.
Okay, thank you for that. And if we look at the turnover, it was very healthy or strong, I would say. Would you expect that to be sustainable, all things equal?
Yes, I mean, we do have a fantastic base. So that's first and foremost the most important bit. And we're at a point now where we do see relatively large contracts starting to mature and get to the finish line, particularly in the European market. So we do expect growth, and notable significant growth to where we are today. The same goes for the US operation. I mean, the potential that company has is enormous. I mean, at one stage before we acquired, I had 44 clinics, and it was reporting north of 30 million SEK. Now we have wind down and conservatively restructured that to make sure we focus on a very solid amount of clinics to begin with to get the fundamentals right for the US. But that growth trajectory is still absolutely there for the US. So in short, There are significant opportunities out there which are significant in respect to the Irish business today.
And if we look at the margins here, and I have to expose my ignorance in the sector, but although margins are down, you have a mouth-watering, I would say, margin of north of 76. You mentioned 77% here. Is this an industry norm, and is it sustainable?
It would be an industry norm because the healthcare industry has an awful lot of regulation put on top of it, not only just in the creation of technology, but also in the post-market monitoring of that technology. So there's a lot of requirements on medical device companies to not only build safe equipment, but to continue following that equipment and make sure it stays safe. So those margins would be typically normal for healthcare companies. The range of 60 to 90% margin would be a fair range. We would see ourselves slightly above average in terms of where that range currently is. The fluctuations really come as about of two key factors: currency fluctuations, but also product mix in any given quarter, whether we sell a little bit more devices or a little bit more consumables. So that's where the variability comes from than any fundamental change in the business model or pricing strategy.
And could I then just jump into another question that I received here regarding the, let's say, the invoice or the billing, as it were. How is that reported? Because I would assume that if you have a contract with a hospital, it will be for let's say a time period, and it will be a certain amount, but it will probably not be paid upfront, or is it paid upfront? How will you communicate the payment, as it were, to the market, and what shall we read into that?
So from a historical perspective, we've always got paid upfront for our sensors in the Irish healthcare market, and that is due to the lead time of the sensors from manufacturing to supply, but also in terms of our initiative to implement that technology rapidly during COVID, and to continue to support it post-COVID. Going forward, we again would focus on annual recurring revenue potential. So anytime we get a new contract or a new account, we would specify it in the terms of the potential annual recurring revenue towards the company. And we would recognize that revenue every quarter as what has been given or delivered. And that's the way we will account new contracts going forward.
And yet again, exposing my ignorance here, but what is, if there is such a thing as a typical ticket size, what would that be? And how long will it take from, let's say, you start negotiation to you sign on the dotted line?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, it does depend on the size of the organization. You know, you look at London, much bigger sites, much denser populations, you know, a bigger need for resources from a company like us. You look at someone just outside London, it's the opposite. So we would see anywhere between in and around 2 million to 4 million as a range of an average annual contract value for English accounts. And that is typically because of our integrated value proposition, where it's both hospital and hospital at home that we're offering as part of that contract. In terms of sales cycles, you know, again, England is notoriously difficult because there's a lot of committees and governance required before signing up on a contract, particularly one of this volume. So we would say that the initial contracts, I think the ones we're working on now, are about 9 months long, and they're now close to closing. But we would see increased credibility because of getting those closed, leading to shorter sales cycles because trust will rely on their neighbouring hospital trusts that a lot of the governance has already been achieved. So we will see an improvement in efficiencies in our sales cycle, but the first ones breaking into the NHS are both the most important, but also the most amount of work.
And just to clarify here, a ticket size of between 2 and 4 million, is that in Swedish kronor, or is it in local
Swedish
currency?
kronor?
Yeah, because we report in Swedish kronor. I just want to make that clear. And also one of the conclusions here may be, UK takes a long time, nine months. When you look at Germany and the US, should we expect a quicker time to, let's say, market or deal?
Yeah, in the US, yes. You know, the value proposition is very clear. We will do remote patient monitoring services for your clinic, for your patients. You don't need to increase your operational costs, and you increase your top line without doing pretty much anything else. We'll do all the heavy lifting for you. So, I mean, it's a very compelling proposition for a lot of healthcare systems. And what's fascinating to us is it isn't holistically known yet that that's available to clinics. So there's huge growth opportunity there. In terms of Germany, we would probably see annual contract cycles. So in the German healthcare market, typically they start deciding on sizable contracts and budgeting around September with a view of purchasing in March the following year. So what we're doing now in Germany is getting the pilots up and running so that we can be part of budgeting conversations in Q3, Q4, so that we can be part of potential contracts by the end of Q1, start of Q2 next year.
And when we're discussing the let's say the ticket size here and the tickets, who is your client? You mentioned that you sell to the hospitals, but is it a hospital or as you refer to the NHS, it's a big organization, or is it a little bit of both?
So not to get too deep about it, if we're just selling sensors to the hospital, and that's it, we don't have anything to do with hospital at home. It's the hospital itself. It's the ward in the hospital. So it's a very micro sell. And it's typically about 10% value of what a hospital at home contract could be, right? But so in the German market, we'd be looking at physicians who are the head of departments for their pulmonary or respiratory ward making a purchase. In the UK context, because we have both hospital and hospital at home, we typically elevate it to the directorate of the region. So it's a more regional sell where the hospitals participate and the community teams participate, but it's the region that's buying it. That's why it has a larger ticket size, and that's why it has a longer sales cycle. In the US, it's going to be the clinic managers. So it's going to be a little bit more easier. If a clinic has 10 doctors, they may get one doctor in as part of the negotiation, but it's the clinical manager that's going to make the final decision. So I would say the English market is probably the most involved selling process. The German market will be less involved, but smaller tickets. And the US will be less involved, but probably higher tickets.
Okay, crystal clear here. And who do you meet in the door as your competitors, given the fact that it seems like all markets seems to be a little bit different? Is the competition different?
No, I mean, one of the most exciting things about the respiratory opportunity is that we are creating a market for it. Oh. You know, the biggest barrier for us is the status quo, the legacy of manually measuring respiratory rate by the nurse. So we're trying to change that status quo by showing them that if they deploy accurate measurements using our technology, that it will lead to improved patient outcomes. And Ireland is a fantastic champion of demonstrating that. England now is a fast follower to also demonstrate that. And the NHS brand carries a lot of weight in the US and of course in Germany as well. So for us, really, it's about creating a market, creating awareness, and changing the status quo. We are very fortunate that there are competitors now trying to come into the respiratory rate market, doing things that we feel won't work, and some doing really interesting things like contactless monitoring and acoustic monitoring that may have its limitations based on our experience in the market. But they're helping us create a lot of noise, a lot of awareness, and the market is huge. So in actual fact, it's helping everyone to create and evolve and have this market evolve or emerge much, much faster.
So the competition would more or less be your, if not partners, so when it comes to marketing, it will be your partners.
Absolutely, yeah.
I also have to expose a little bit of my ignorance here yet again. Acute hospital sales versus hospital at home service. How should I understand it? Obviously, it will be more or less same products, but perhaps tailor-made for the purpose. But would that be able to operate as a standalone, or are the two offers so intertwined, so a spin-off will be impossible?
No, they absolutely can stand alone. We have some sites interested in just a hospital at home for long chronic obstructive pulmonary disease patients. And we have hospitals that just use it in the hospital setting. Where we're starting to promote value is to the hospital to say, hey, look, if you have an integrated care pathway between acute and community using our technology to create the right decisions at the right time, you can have huge impact on patient outcomes, but also efficiencies in delivering that service and cost benefits and capacity benefits. And I think that's where England is probably a little bit more ahead of the curve, because they're seeing the potential for the integrated care pathway and using our technology for that exact purpose. Reduce the length of stay in hospitals, allow more beds for patients, which reduces pressure on emergency departments, but also makes patients happier being treated at home in a safe environment.
That's an interesting point you're making there, because it seems like countries with, let's say, the NHS setup, as we do have here in Sweden, there is an urgency of, let's say, free up hospital beds. So that's why it's just interesting to see that hospital at home service could be a standalone in itself, and perhaps then required a higher valuation for the company, as it were. R&D, innovations, and continuous improvement, you are ahead of the, let's say, curve or the pack. How much do you expect you need to put on R&D and innovations?
Well, the good news is that between Sweden and Ireland, there are some amazing clinical and technology academic centres that really look to partner with companies like us to create new features which change the dynamic again of how the technology is used to improve patient outcomes. So we're actually looking to partner with such institutions to co-develop the next generation of machine learning prediction models of not just the respiratory rate is 20, but the respiratory rate is 20 and it has been going up 3 breaths every hour for the last 6 hours. Something else is going on. So if we can actually put more intelligence and more information into our technology by partnering with academic and clinical centres to create those features, again, we remain ahead of the curve. And based on our history of over a decade of understanding respiratory rate and clinical pathways and workflows, we know exactly what we could potentially do to disrupt the industry again. So we'll be looking for partners, which will come at huge cost efficiencies as well, because we will share the cost development. So I'm delighted to say that the cost of creating these new features is only a fraction of our operational expenditure going forward. So we are really focused on growing as a company, but we do still have, 10% or less focus on continuing R&D activity because we compound it by partnering with academic institutions.
Interesting. And if we then look at more or less what you've been saying here, so you're offering, let's say, a very important technology for the healthcare. You are ahead of the pack with a product that is fairly flexible for home and abroad. And you are not only the founder, but a major shareholder. Are you for sale?
Look, I have a single vision. I mean, if you look at most images of my LinkedIn, the product is always front and center. If we get this right, our product will be as industry norm as a blood pressure cuff for blood pressure monitoring. And that's our single focus right now. We've just acquired a business. We are focusing our efforts on growing awareness of respiratory rate, but also of our opportunity. Right now, we are just singularly focused on becoming the market leader. And whatever comes from that, comes from that. But we did list for a very good reason. We listed because we saw ourselves as the potential market leader for these different segments, and that the capital markets were a fantastic way of us achieving that ambition. And that's our single focus right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Myles. And one final question here then for the viewers or anyone else listening. If one would like to participate in this journey, where should one turn oneself? Is it your homepage or Where should one go?
Our homepage has all the information there. You can go to your current broker that manages your own portfolio. And you can, of course, go to InvestDirect's website to also get links towards the rights issue as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Myles, thank you and good luck. Not that you need it. It seems like everything is prepared. Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Likewise, thank you.
Och till alla er som tittar så säger vi tack ska ni ha och gå till hemsidan nu och titta mer på detta. Tack ska ni ha. Hej.